at the receiving end are we are imparting knowledge using one or the other platforms, right? So in general, over the last 8 months, what has been your experience of dealing with technology while imparting knowledge? And I'm sure we have been part of uh, bombarding of the webinars that we have seen over the last 6 to 8 months, and we have attended quite many of them and so on and so forth. And we have taught students using one or the other platforms. What in general has been your experience of dealing with numerous technologies during this time, or otherwise also when we are taking regular sessions into the classrooms and we are dealing, struggling, enjoying different kinds of technologies? And moreover, these last 2 days where you have been interacting with your peers, faculty members, instructors during this FDP. So any comments, your views on that, and then we will move to this session. Anybody can just please unmute and you can share your thoughts.
Very good morning, sir.
Very good morning.
My name is
It will be
Archana.
helpful if you can just tell me your first name in the beginning so I can identify you. Yes.
My name is Archana. My
Hello.
name is Archana. Yes. Sir, actually, it's a great session for all of us because we are doing it in virtual. And, it is very comfortable for us that we are at office or at home, we are able to switch front, which is affecting me because as a person not so used to it. For such a long hours, we are sitting in front of computer and listening. So yes, it has become a huge challenge, but yes, it's a need of an hour, and definitely it will give us a lot of inputs because we are connecting with people who are around the world. So yes, it's a good experience, but yes, few flaws, as I said, I need to get more adjusted to this technology. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am, for sharing your thoughts. Anybody else? I'm just taking down few points that I'll be using into the
Good morning,
discussion.
sir.
Okay, yeah,
So,
we can go one
good
by
morning,
one.
sir.
Doctor, yeah, please go ahead. Yes.
Dr. Atul, sir, here.
Yeah,
Actually,
Dr.
we are very comfortable with this new technologies as we were using earlier also. But only thing is that there are some platforms like Moodle we are not which I feel that we are not comfortable because it is so much difficult to understand and resources should be there. So lack of resources in the rural areas, those who are staying at rural areas, they are facing so many problems. And of course, there is a network issues and all that. So I think it is good. Actually, we recommend all the students, and we are in touch from last 8 to 9 months. Before that, also we used to use such type of platforms.
Okay, thank you very much,
Hello.
Dr. Atul.
Yes.
Just let me have some brief discussion with Dr. Atul. Dr. Atul, you come from semi-urban or rural area, or you're talking about from the
I
students' point of view that students are in the rural area, they are struggling to adjust.
Yes, we actually really catering to the rural area students situated in Katol and in Nagpur district.
Oh, okay, okay, very much. So we come from nearby. We are also situated
Yes, sir. Yes,
In Katol Road. We are closer to Katol than Nagpur city. Yes. So
yes,
thank you very much for that input, Dr. Atul. And yes, certain platforms, technologies, as you mentioned, Moodle probably we are not very comfortable with because we are probably not used it. Students are not very comfortable because probably they are not sure how to use the resources, and There are lack of resources at times that can be shared and so on and so forth. So we will cover on those topics as well. Okay, anybody else?
Hello.
Dr. Jyoti?
Oh,
Yes, sir.
hello.
I'd like to share my experience. Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Dr.
So
Jyoti,
from
it is?
March, as soon
Anuradha,
as
ma'am.
as soon as the lockdown started, I came to my hometown because Bombay was closed almost. So we
Okay.
decided, and we thought that we'll go after 1 month or 2 months, but it never happened. We are still in, stuck in our hometown. But it's a wonderful opportunity that we have, explored all the type of online platforms like Google Classrooms, Zoom platform, Google Meets. So we have explored all these technological options with our students, and students are quite now adapted to it. In fact, yesterday was my experience that we had an induction, BBF freshers induction. So that also we did online, and it was possible for the students also to get adapted to the technology. Last 6 months, 6 to 8 months, they have explored all the options that are available. And I think
Thank you.
learning is going in a very faster way. So what I have not done from last 12 years in my career, that I was able to do in this within 8 months.
That's wonderful. That is the so every crisis is also an opportunity. That is what we say. I would request everyone other than somebody who is speaking to kindly mute your microphone so that there is less noise or disturbance, and it will be good to then interact, and I will be able to hear properly, and you also will be able to. So thank you very much. This was Anuradha ma'am, right? You shared your
No,
experience.
Jyoti ma'am, Jyoti
This was
Jake.
okay, Dr. Jyoti. Okay.
Sir, I'm Anuradha. Can I speak?
Yes, ma'am, please. Please.
Yeah, I would divide the use of ICT into two categories, that is before COVID and post COVID. So before COVID, of course, we were using a lot of ICT. We are familiar with the Moodle, which we are using regularly at our college. Basically, I come from Cyber Kolhapur, Maharashtra. It's a NAC A++ accredited college. So we're using the Moodle. We were, of course, using presentations and a lot of other things. And students were also familiar with the use of all the technology. Post-COVID, we had to shift to online teaching, and we were using different platforms. Now, what I find is when we go into online teaching, the personal connect or the one-to-one connect with the students is missing. So as you know, right now, you're not aware of how I believe 60 of us have logged in, but you do not know how many of us are actually, paying attention, and there is no feedback. So that is one drawback I feel of this technology. Secondly, I feel the technology that we use sometimes does not, allow, like, for example, we're using the Google Meet for online classes. But when we have more than a specific number of students, then it becomes very difficult to talk to each other because the size of the call does not allow some students to unmute themselves unless they have very good technology and access to technology. So that becomes a problem. Network already somebody has spoken about. One more thing is, in ICT, when we are talking about using of videos and flipped classrooms for our delivery, I think that becomes a problem because though there are a lot of open source softwares available where we can make our videos, but somehow we're not really very trained in doing that. We do not have the proper equipment. So making our own videos, uploading them on YouTube channels or on the Moodle for the students to watch, that becomes a problem. So I think these are various issues, which we have to face with when we are using ICT. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Anuradha ma'am. Yes, good morning.
This is Vandana, sir. Can I speak?
Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Very good morning, sir, and good morning to all. I very much agree with, I too am facing the same problem as that of Anuradha ma'am as she spoke, that I am not able to understand whether the students are actually attentive, they are, involved in the class or not. And one more thing is that when we were in real classes, we used to connect with our students by looking at their facial expressions or their gestures, which is not possible here. And most of the students, they take this plea that we have connectivity issues, so we are not able to speak or switch on our like video. So that is one of the major challenges that I have been facing. And also, like using various techniques like videos and all, we are not very much acquainted with this. So that is the biggest challenge, I suppose. And most of the students who are in the rural area, they are facing this problem. So like if the connection goes out, then some of the students are not they do not like learn the things that we have already shared, like through PPTs and all, or whatever we are speaking. So that's the problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Bandana. Okay, so enough points that I have gathered, and probably some of the issues, challenges, problems that I wanted to discuss, you have already highlighted. Somebody else is sharing the screen.
Sir, good morning. I'm just willing to add one more point. Basically, I have faced myself when we are trying to deliver.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, sir, I'm Dr. Vineet from Jaipur National University. Basically, I myself have faced this problem. At times, what happens is your whole class is being hijacked by someone else, and you feel yourselves helpless because see, certain students might have shared that link, and that link by some other person, and they tend to get into something nuisance kind of, maybe abusive language or maybe anything, right? So this is also one challenge which I myself have faced. Yes, before introduction means introducing any students into my class, I need to check. But at times what happens is, once you are admitting say 60 students at a time, so becomes really difficult for you to cross check. At times you tend to miss. So this is a major problem. How can we get out of this? How can we address this issue? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Vineet. If I may ask you, just then, if you have encountered such problem, what was your response? How did you handle it so that everyone can get benefited?
Basically, sir, the situation was so worst. The person was very abusive. He was speaking anything and everything. So I don't find much solution for this. I simply terminated that meeting and reintroduce one more meeting to my students and ask them to join that. Right. Otherwise, I couldn't trace that individual also. Who was that?
Okay. Yes, so at times we can face this problem because this platform is new, our own experiences are new. As somebody said that pre-COVID and post-COVID, we would like to divide this this whole teaching and learning experience, which is very, very right. And for students, for most of the students, it is also a new platform. So they are also exploring, and the students, the typical age that they are in, we know that how they are going to behave, right? And they behave very differently. So at times we are into the awkward situation, as Dr. Vineet says, we feel like session is being hijacked by somebody else, and I don't know. We at IMT Nagpur also face some of these kinds of problems, not to that because we kept certain checks and balances. But of course, let me share one or two incidences where, let's say, few students, everybody has given an ID and so on and so forth, but they have changed their name. So there was an option of keeping a participant name. I can keep my name, right? Here in this option as well, I can change my name. So they have impersonated themselves as somebody else, and then they started chatting and sending messages and so on and so forth. So common problem, the age they are in and new platform they have got. So they want to experiment and so on and so forth. All right. As somebody said, Dr. Anuradha has said, and Dr. Bandana has also said that this platform is new, and probably I don't know what my students are doing when they are interacting with a screen. And because of bandwidth issues or because of, I don't know, so many other issues, even if you repeatedly ask them to come online and share your thoughts and views and whatever, you will find the students not doing so, not switching on their camera, which is a very common problem. So you ask 10 instructors, academicians, faculty members, teachers, out of 10, 9 will complain about this particular problem, that students are not ready to come onto the camera because of several reasons. Because probably they are not there, because they are on their WhatsApp groups, because they are watching a Netflix series in parallel, and so many other things, because of they are just logged in and they are very casual. They are not in a presentable shape, format or whatever. And at times, maybe because of genuine reasons. It can also happen that because of bandwidth issues, it doesn't allow them to switch on their cameras and so on and so forth. So there are myriad of challenges and issues that we come across, and many times we don't know what is the solution, because we also are using this for the first time. We are also naive to this particular technology. So thank you very much, everyone, for giving so many different perspectives to it. And as Dr. Jyoti said that from last 12 years, she has not been using this technology or these technologies to the extent that we are using. And I'm sure that most of us are almost every one of us were not using this technology to this extent that this COVID has forced us to use, and which is a blessing in disguise, because this will open up new opportunities. This will open up new avenues of teaching and learning process that we are going through. And I'm sure that we will find our ways through it too. So with this introductory remarks and with this nice observations that you all have shared, let me quickly go through my presentation and the topics that I would like to cover. And I would please switch off your, please mute your microphones. If anybody is, yeah. So that will help me to be clear and my voice will reach good to you. Okay, so now we have a good number of participants that we have, and let me, are you able to see my some PPT? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's good. So please be interactive. Feel free to interrupt me, pause me at any point of time. I would like you to be very participative. The thing that we are saying for our students, that many times we don't know they are there or not, they are attentive or not, they are listening to or not. The only way we can cross check this is by cold calling, by the way or the virtue of students participating into the discussion. So I would request all of you to do that, which gives me a feeling or a sense of comfort that you are participating and you are in the session, physically, mentally, whatever. Okay, these are some of the things that we are going to cover in next 1.5 hours that we have. Why to use technology? Is it really necessary that I should use technology? What is the ICT used in teaching and learning process? In what forms and different ways it can be used? Is it compulsory for everyone to use it? Or is it depending upon the role, the courses, the methods that I'm using, I should use it? What are different modes of learning? What was the scenario before and now? With the evolution of technology, with the evolution of e-learning platforms, how the things are changing? What are the new modes of learning? What are the benefits and the challenges? As many of you have pointed out, I have challenges side is towards more issues that we have seen. Benefits we will also discover, and many of you have also pointed out benefits that you're learning new and you are learning how to approach to this new tool. That's a benefit, that's a learning itself. Some of the recent initiatives by the government of, and some of them are really as old as last 10 years, where government of India has proposed the e-learning platforms and the mission for promoting e-learning and so on and so forth. And then we will see what is the way ahead. Going ahead, what it will be like if there are disruptive technologies which are disrupting the education as a system, right? Not just my classroom, not just me as a teacher, but the education as a whole. What are the new avenues that are going to come? So before we go ahead, let us see, this is a typical digital day that most of us live in, right? So we are interacting with plenty of technologies. As soon as I get up, first thing that I'll do is I'll check, I'll snooze the alarm or I will close the alarm that is ringing in my phone. I'll check what are the messages that have come and so on and so forth, right? The first thing I reach out to whenever I just wake up is my mobile phone. And there are studies which say that 70 to 80% of the people who own a smartphone, they keep their smartphone most of the time during the day, and even when they are sleeping, not just more than one hand's distance away. So this is so much connection with my technology, with a platform that I want to be connected round the clock and for each and everything, right? Be it looking for a particular information, scheduling a meeting, looking for movie tickets, ordering my pizza, whatever you are trying to book a train ticket, your travel, your holiday destination, movie, anything, and you are one way or the other connected to different kinds of platforms, right? So this is a typical digital day that we live, and the amount of exposure to these kinds of different platforms and the screen time is increasing day by day, right? So on an average 2.5 to 3 hours, and it can go up to 6 to 7 hours. And now during this COVID era, this has gone probably up to 8 to 9 hours in a day that you are constantly connected with the technology. And somebody also pointed out that this is an issue that staring to a particular screen for this much long hours is a challenge. And this has different kinds of psychological or mental health issues as well that we will cover into the challenges part as we. What does the 21st century classroom look like? And there is a Bloom taxonomy that is very popular, which talks about a pyramid, which is related to your learning objectives and so on and so forth. If we translate this into a digital era, into a digital teaching learning process, different kinds of technologies that we have, the Bloom's taxonomy would look something like this. So there are different stages, those 7 stages that it grows to, 6 stages that it goes through, from remembering to creating. These are different kinds of platforms, tools, technologies available, which supports Bloom's taxonomy, right? From remembering to creating different kinds of venues. So in a 21st century classroom, if we are talking about revolution into the education as a system, or teaching and learning as a process, somehow or the other, these are going to play a major role, and they are already playing. As we have said that we have used plenty of platforms, from Google Classrooms to Microsoft Teams to Adobe Connect and so many other things. So they are integral part of our teaching and learning process. Why we want to use technology into the teaching? What is the need? So there are different. One is compulsion. We don't have any option now because of this physical distancing, and physically it is not allowed. So we are forced to use technology. But otherwise, let us go back 1 year back. And if I have asked you the same question, why you want to use technology in your classroom or in a teaching process, what would have been some of the answers? So one can be, it is the need of the hour, or whatever that is, I don't know. Because everybody wants to differentiate themselves. Everybody want to say that we have a state-of-the-art infrastructure for teaching and learning. As an institution, they want to brag about it. It has added advantages. That is why it is called that it is the need of the hour. It shows that you are up, ready, and catching up with the current times, and so on and so forth. So one can be this. I feel pressure because everybody else is using it. So everybody else is trying to use different kinds of technologies or platforms into their classrooms. Somebody said Moodle, right? And others are using it, let's say, for conducting online quizzes, for conducting different kinds of things, sharing different kinds of documents with the students. So I also feel to use it, right? Because others are using it. So it's a peer pressure, it's a whatever you want to call it. Top management wants it, because the dictate that has come from the top and from the administration, from the institute, that we should promote digital education. This is part of the government's agenda or whatever. And that is why we want to use it. So you feel a pressure that I have to use it somehow or the other. Many times it is required to deliver the curriculum that has been designed. So let's say if I'm offering a certificate program in digital marketing, I cannot do it without using technology in my classroom. I cannot deliver what is required, what is the learning outcome, without going into different kinds of platforms which helps me to achieve those learning outcomes. So it is the requirement of my curriculum. I am teaching, let's say, business analytics course, and there I am talking about big data analytics. I cannot teach it without using different kinds of technologies. So it is requirement of the curriculum. The course needing, let's say I'm teaching a course in MS Excel. So I have to use that technology, right? So basic laptops or computers, Microsoft Excel, different kinds of tools and platforms that I have to use it because it is a requirement of my course or the curriculum. So these are different factors which is driving the use of technology in teaching and so on and so forth. It is a pedagogical innovation. So many see that the technology and the evolution of technology and the different waves of technologies that have come into the education. This provides me different kinds of opportunities, right, to innovate my teaching and learning methods, which is a wonderful way, right? I can use different kinds of simulation games and softwares and such platforms which otherwise not available or otherwise I was not using to impart the same learning objective. But now I can make use of it, which makes my teaching more innovative in terms of the pedagogy that I'm using, right? It is a preferred mode of learning. So many times it is a pull from the students. So maybe I'm not very much comfortable. I don't know. I'm otherwise also comfortable in teaching my course, but I see that the students who are receiving that knowledge, they are more onto different kinds of platforms. So they prefer learning something more on a screen than reading, let's say, from the book. And we have faced it, and let's accept, and at least I have faced it many a times. You give them the books for the courses, but hardly they open it, or they open it very selectively when they are forced. But they are very much comfortable in learning the same thing from the Wikipedia or from different kinds of blog posts which are there on the Quora, or different kinds of discussion forums which are available online, right? So now this digital has become a preferred mode of learning for the students. That is what also prompting me to adopt these kinds of technologies. It helps in teaching. So preferably some of the technologies, some of the things, Moodle as has been pointed out, it helps in my teaching, and it reduces some of the if I can say clerical job that I was doing, maintaining attendance. Now, if there is a biometric system, right, it reduces that load of maintaining that register and calculating it and doing it, and students every time approaching you after 5, 7, 10 classes that what is my attendance and so on and so forth. It saves your energy, right? You don't have to print so many copies of this particular case or particular thing that you want to distribute. You upload it on the Moodle or on your ERP system, and just with a single click, it has reached to the mailboxes of all the students, which they can read anytime, anywhere, when they're traveling, when they're eating in the mess, easily, comfortably on their tablets, on their mobile phones, and so on and so forth. So it saves a lot of time and energy and reduces the efforts that otherwise was going into managing those things, and it has given you time to focus more on your core job, which is teaching, right? So these are some of the whys that why we want to use technology into the teaching. As somebody said that there are multiple ways of looking at it. So I can broadly classify this ICT and teaching learning process into two ways, where IT acts as a supporting tool, as we said, and almost all of us have used this in one way or the other. We walking into our classes, holding a laptop. There is a projector which projects whatever there is on my screen. I use slide changer to just point and highlight and change my slides. So it is more of a supporting tool, right? We talked about biometric, which captures the attendance, and so many other things. ERP system, which is a supporting tool, which helps me in classroom management, I would say. And second is ICT use beyond the classroom environment, which is more holistic, which is more collaborative in nature, which is more diverse, which is more need-based, right? So I broadly classify these two into two things. Let us quickly see that what was traditional ways of teaching and learning, whereas what is the new age or the digital age learning model? What is the difference and the contrast that we are seeing? In the traditional classroom environment, when an instructor walks into the class with a set of PPTs or the reading material or a lecture, it is that one size fits all kind of environment, wherein everybody receives the same amount of information and the ways to process that information. Whereas into the digital age, this has been to a certain extent modified into the personalized learning, whereas we can provide flexible resources which can be optimized for each and every student. And students are free to look into resources depending on their interest into the subject, right? So you have plenty of resources available online. Second, it is the primarily education happens based on the time that you spent into the class, right? Whereas the second point talks about the advancements based on the demonstrated mastery of the content and competency in applying that has been learned, right? So with the concepts that you have got into the class, now you go online and you try to apply more knowledge, or you want to seek more knowledge related to it, and then you develop mastery over the period of time, which is available, which is now being facilitated by different kinds of technological platforms. The time and the mode and the ways of teaching was fixed within the boundaries of the schools, now which has gone away. I'm sitting here in Jodhpur currently, and you are coming across different parts of this country, and it is every time, anytime, anywhere. Learning can happen 24/7. So I don't have to wait for Monday morning 9 o'clock for my classroom to get open. Even if at Saturday night 11 o'clock I feel like I want to learn, let's say, a particular concept, I can just quickly log into the YouTube and I can start watching to it. Forum, put my queries there. I can go to Wikipedia and I can search for this thing. So learning has become everywhere phenomena and every time phenomena, and it is not only restricted to the classroom environment. Earlier teachings used to be a teacher-centered approach, where I am giving knowledge to my students. Whereas this shift has happened from a teacher imparting knowledge, and there was an interesting session, I think, by Dr. Senthil, from sage on the stage to the guide by your side, right? So it is not that I am going to supply certain piece of information which my students are going to mug up and they are going to write a particular exam and achieve certain grades, but it is more student centric. So out of the 20 topics that I am going to talk in my course, let's say a student is more focused on 5 to 6 topics and he wants to develop mastery over that, he can do that, right? And there is a flexibility into the system that provides that. And the role of the teacher here becomes more of an person who is managing that orchestra. So you become facilitator rather than being a teacher. And these tools and technologies, they provide you a flexibility in doing that. Then going ahead, there was printed statics test, which is mostly out of the date. So when I'm teaching e-commerce, let's say a course that I will talk about in detail and my experiments with the technology in that course in 2020. And if I'm referring a textbook which was written in 2014 and 15 probably, the ways and means this commerce is being probably my content that I'm supplying is out of dated, and which happens in most of the cases. Recent World Economic Forum reports, if you refer to Future of Jobs, they say that 65% students who are entering into the education system now, and by the time they will be graduated, the things that they are learning will be outdated. 40% of the jobs that will be there in the near future, we don't know. There is no curriculum for that, right? So there is nobody who is teaching how to operate drones, right? How to do programming for the drones, or how to train robots for doing household chores, right? So these are not into the curriculums because of the rapid shift and the dynamic changes into the technological environment. Many times the content which are there in my textbooks, they are irrelevant or out of date. I'm also teaching, as you might have noticed in my brief profile, that I have interest in teaching and research into the cybersecurity area. And believe me, we are offering here at my current organization at IIT Jodhpur specialization program in cybersecurity. And believe me, it's a tough task to find a state-of-the-art, updated, recent book on cybersecurity, right? Because the field is evolving so much, which might probably not be the case with every single discipline. Let's say somebody who is teaching basics of accounting and financial management. The context remains the same largely, right? So 70% things remains the same. It is okay. Laws of physics, the basics, if you're teaching, laws remains the same. The textbook remains the same. So it depends on the context, the environment, the kind of courses or the curriculum that you are teaching. So it varies based on that. But still, if you see the text that is being used in process and the you will your and we just click on it, written there, and we move ahead. So which is a very superficial learning that happens at times too for the students. So which is the challenge side that we will discuss in some time, right? There is a standardized assessment towards the end. Most of the times we see when our classes are towards the end side of it, then we give all the presentation, assignments, and so on and so forth. Whereas online programs or the e-learning programs that you see or you come across on different platforms, they promote generally the continuous or integrated assessment systems. Also to ensure that students are learning, students are there. Forget about learning. They are there. They are following the process. So you cannot go to the module 2 unless you submit this particular assignment or quiz or certain things into module 1. So they kind of create a continuous assessment system as well. And academia was addressed in isolation in typical classroom teaching environment where there was no collaboration happening and so on and so forth. Even if it was happening in a limited sense. Whereas into the more connected and learning environment, it is assumed that there will be more collaboration and coordination happening among the students inside and outside of the classroom. So these are some of the assumptions of then and now what is happening into the technology sphere as far as teaching and learning process is concerned. So as we discussed, there are 2-3 different ways of defining it. How to use technology in my classroom or in imparting teaching and learning. One is technology as an aid. So as we discussed, my projector or the slide changer, the laptop, the OCRs that we have where we had printed sheets and we wanted to project it to the students, biometric machines, they are support systems. They are helping me in conducting certain sets of activities, which otherwise would be difficult for me, or it will be easy if I use them. Second is the technology which is supplementing or enhancing the teaching and learning, which is there are plenty of sources coming from different kinds of learning management systems to the ERP systems, different kinds of online databases, platforms, MarketLine, which helps me in providing different kinds of company information, databases like CMIE, Capitaline, online educator resources, or the digital libraries, EBSCOhost, right? These are helping and supporting me and supplementing or enhancing my teaching and learning process, right? LMS system provided by the SAP, Litmus, it is a great tool to supplement or to enhance my teaching learning process, right? As some of you said, Moodle, and probably there's not much resources, I don't know. So there are multiple challenges that we will talk about in some time, and some of you have highlighted it already, that I don't know how to use many of these resources. I don't know how to upload certain things onto the Moodle. I don't know how to conduct a quiz online. If I have a set of question papers in MCQ format, in a Word format, I don't know how to put that into the Moodle. So these are some issues which are there, for which we need training, which is lacking for the teachers, for the faculty members. That is why even though we have these platforms, even though you have SAP Litmus, which is a wonderful learning management system, I'm not using more than 7 to 8% of all the capabilities that tool provides me. So which is there, which has been proven by n number of studies, right? Third type is the technology platforms that are enabling learning. So it is not just a support to my teaching in classroom. It is not just an additional resource that I'm providing with EBSCO host or Capitaline or different kinds of simulation softwares that I use in my teaching and learning. But these are some platforms which are disrupting education as a concept as well, right? So there are different kinds of tech companies from Google to LinkedIn, which have ventured into different kinds of teaching and learning process. Why? We will discuss it in brief time, because they have that plenty of information available with them, which helps them to design certain courses for the students. So if we talk about LinkedIn, if we talk about Google, they exactly know what people are looking at, right? What kind of information they are searching for, from which geography, from which region there is a more emphasis on what kind of programs. And then they can design these kinds of programs. There are different kinds of platforms like Upgrad and Coursera, which provides you, these have become new universities. So I won't be wrong if I call Upgrad as a new university or Coursera as a new university, where there are probably millions of students, which is impossible for new universities to, or any traditional universities to hold, and offer thousands of programs that these are providing. To interrupt me at any point of time. If you have any point to discuss, just let me know so that we can discuss it. All right. And if you have anything, just feel free to interrupt me. Right. Anything that you want to write, because I when I'm presenting, I'm not able to follow the chat much. So if you're writing something, just you can unmute and you can highlight, you can add any point that you feel like adding in between. Right. So these are the third type of platforms which are enabling learning. Khan Academy, if some of you have heard about and some of you have explored this, which is a revolution in terms of providing education to and free education. They're not charging it unless you are subscribing for a premium program or you want certificates or whatever. 90% content on the Khan Academy is free of cost, right? And which is a wonderful way of imparting knowledge without going to a classroom, without talking to somebody. And somebody talked about people coming from the rural areas where there are unavailability of good skilled resources. When I'm saying resources, these are instructors or the teachers. Forget about the rural areas, the IITs. There is a shortage of 35% in terms of the faculty in all the IITs put together. And this is the government data. You can go and cross-verify, right? So now these kinds of platforms, they are providing an alternate ways or medium to fill in these kinds of gaps. Wherever there is no program which I'm looking for is available in my university, in my current university. I don't know, I cannot do it. So there's a limitation in terms of providing what exactly I want, but which is available, let's say, on a minimum charges, or at times it is free on Upgrad or Coursera. So I can go and do it there. I need a certification which I don't know. In my vicinity, there is nobody. Somebody said coming from Katol, and our institute is, IMT Nagpur is situated at Katol. There are no certification programs. I cannot do it in a physical mode, but Google and LinkedIn, they know exactly what kind of skill sets that are there in demand into market or in a particular domain or an industry, and they can tailor make those things from best of the best industry partners, from Microsoft to Google to whatever, and they can provide you those kinds of certifications, which adds into your overall CV, if I say, and the learning, which makes you more equipped, which is not there into the traditional classroom environment or the curriculums. So these are the ways of transforming education in a new way altogether. So this is the third type of use of ICT, I would say, or technology or digital as a platform into the education.
Hello.
Now technology.
Sir. Hello.
Yes, please.
Sir, interrupting. Sir, sorry for interrupting. Some asking you some about.
Yes, please tell me. First, can you please tell me your name so that I can identify you?
Myself, Dr. Bolaram Patra from West Bengal.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Balram. Yes, please tell.
Actually, I want to know, you just telling the different search engine or different technology platform for doing search for education or for learning. What I want to know, this search engine or this technology platform is free to access to every to us, or
Yes,
that
most of them, Dr. Balram. This is not just a search platforms. So search you can do anywhere on the Google, on the Bing, or other platforms. But the platforms that I'm talking about, Udemy, let me go back, Upgrad, Coursera.
Yes.
So 90% programs are free of cost,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
You can just log in and you can learn the content free of cost, unless you are going for a degree or a diploma. Or let's say there is a cybersecurity program where they are offered by State University of New York, right? Or there are plenty of programs available onto the NPTEL portal, the SWAYAM portal, which is by Government of India, which is mostly largely free of cost, right? Of course, at times there is a schedule when the program starts, when the program ends, because there is a synchronous and asynchronous learning. We will come to that how the programs are designed, right? But most of the times these programs are self-paced, free of cost. And if you want a degree or if you want a certificate, of course, but which, if I compare it with the physical mode, the fee that B schools or any other school is charging in comparison to the online, they are much cheaper.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Excellent for sir, for Dr. Singh, for excellent for delivering this lecture. I mean, very beautiful information I have gathered from you. Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. We will go ahead and probably you will find it. Few things that are there furthermore will be of interest to some of you. Any other additional point? Anyone? Quickly, if you want to add something or if you want to highlight certain thing. Any comment so far?
Hello, sir.
Yes, Dr. Bandana. Yes.
Hello, sir. This is me.
Hello.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, sir?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, ma'am. Very
So,
much.
so I just wanted to ask one
Okay, there are two
question.
people speaking at the same time. One is, I think, Dr. Rohini and Dr. Bandana. Any one of you can go ahead.
Okay, sir. This
But
is Vandana.
Yes, ma'am.
My only query is that nowadays we are so many, like the FDP program that we are attending now. There's so many programs that we get links to join and all. So I just wanted to know what would be the credibility of the certificates, because nowadays we are getting so many e-certificates. So I had this thing in my mind, like what would be the credibility of these certificates?
Very interesting. Yes, good. Thanks for highlighting this. I'll touch upon this shortly. Yeah, Dr. Rohini, yeah, you wanted to say something?
sir, I just want to share my experience with this teaching plan by using whatever platform you have suggested in your slide, like Coursera, Swayam, NPTEL, Atal portal. So what we did, we in the initial lecture plan, we find out the gaps in the content available online, and whatever the gap is there, that much content we are creating or developing and delivering to the students. And the material which is good, authenticated material like on Swayam and Coursera, we are suggesting students to enroll for that programs and go for that course, so that that part will be covered in that online content, and only the gaps we are filling. And that's why the load for online teaching has been reduced to a large extent. And even when they are doing these courses, we are evaluating them, we are observing their what you can say, that attendance or their sincerity while doing those courses also, while taking lectures alternate day, that what is their progress, what they are learning through these courses. So this is one of a very good platform to bridge the gap, what is available and what is not available as per the syllabus given by the university. or as per the requirement of the industry also.
That is wonderful, ma'am. That is how it should be done. And when you say that you are tracking their progress and their learning and their attentiveness, you do it by your own, some platforms or some tools or whatever available is on, let's say, Coursera, because Swayam doesn't give you much of these kinds of these facilities. But Coursera has that. As an instructor, you can see how the students are progressing and all that. So you're depending on that, or you are using any other such platform, if you want to share.
In Google Classroom, we have asked the students to mention the course in which they have been enrolled, what is their progress, and we ask some questions or assignment to submit on that particular course time to time. And the students who are not submitting or responding to those questions on Google Classroom, we connect with them and we ask them to make the changes in whatever they are doing and how they should respond.
Wonderful, wonderful, ma'am. And that is the right way. It is not just completely you outsource your program or the course to the Coursera, and you feel like now students will do it and they will learn what they want to learn because probably this is being offered by best of the best places in the world, top universities, they are offering this program, content is good and my job is done. It cannot happen. I will show you some statistics which will be mind-boggling and you will find very strange, right? Which says not more than 10% people who enroll, students or otherwise instructors as well, who enroll for these kinds of programs on different kinds of platforms like Coursera and so, only hardly 10% people, they finish these kinds of programs, right? Because there is no motivation, there is no constant push from the instructor side and so on and so forth to finish this. And we know the kind of traditional ways of teaching and learning where there's a lot of push coming from our constant checking that happens from the instructor side, which keeps on pushing the students to complete the courses and so on and so forth, which doesn't happen online. So only 10% is towards the higher side, not more than 10% people who enroll in these kinds of free courses, they never complete it. So they won't go beyond one week or so on and so forth. So that is one particular case. I see some of the hands being raised. Dr. Lalita, if you want to share something, please go ahead and you can. Dr. Vineet, Dr. Lalita, anyone?
So thank you very much. Basically, what I am saying is I have already done some 5 courses from NPTEL and some 14-15 courses from Coursera. Now I wish to move from being a student to being facilitator. So what are the possible avenues? How I can deliver basically I'm belonging to a private university. So that may not be providing me a platform. So what are the possible ways by which people like me can get on these platforms so that we should be able to connect with a lot of newer learners and will be able to deliver whatever we can. All right. Please help me out in this.
Perfect. So thank you, Dr. Vineet, for sharing this. As Dr. Rohini was mentioning, right, that there is a program, let's say on NPTEL or on Coursera, and the same course that I am teaching, I know what is my course content, what I'm going to teach, what is available on online. Now, certain things which can be outsourced, I'm using the word outsourced, to these online platforms. Let's say if I'm teaching a spreadsheet modeling, so basically which is Excel and data analysis and modeling in Excel. Now, there are basic things in Excel that I don't want to invest my energy inside a classroom. So I know out of these 6, 7, 8 modules, these 4 modules I can outsource to the NPTEL, this particular course which is available, which I trust. Somebody said that how do we trust? I think Bandana ma'am said that how do we trust different kinds of certificates program, different kinds of online training programs that are there. But the sources that I can say, let's say there's a spreadsheet modeling course on Excel, which is being provided by, let's say, IIT Madras, and there is a certain credibility to attach to the institute, to the faculty, and so on and so forth. And then I can say that, okay, these 4 modules, you have to do it by your own. Before coming to the, I will start scenarios from these 4 modules and how to convert these spreadsheet modeling concepts in solving, let's say, particular problem, which helps you in decision making. So what I'm doing is I'm not teaching them basic how to create the balance sheet, but I'm saying how to read the balance sheet in a particular situation, right? How not to create a profit loss statement, but how to interpret it in a given context, right? So certain things which I can ask students to complete before coming to the class, that can reduce my effort on teaching some basic things, whereas I can focus on more into the application side of it, right? So that is more advantageous. I was doing a program from Stern Business School where they have said that we have stopped teaching management accounting. We don't teach it. We have stopped teaching different kinds of courses which required fundamentals. So before the program starts, so let's say program starts in September, October sometime, in the March and April, when the admissions has kind of closed and we have identified whom we are going to admit into this particular program, we give them that, okay, these are the 6 modules which are being prepared by, let's say, best of the best places, Harvard Business Schools or whatever. And this you have to do and you have to complete before you come to the campus in September or October, right? So I exactly know on the very first day when you are coming, you have gone through those basic things where you don't need much of the instruction from the teacher, which doesn't require much of the decision making or much of the discussion. As soon as these students come to the class, there is a basic test that happens, which has certain 40%, 50%, 70%, depending on the course, the difficulty level and subject and whatever, that you have to score to finally enroll into that particular course. And then from there, the teaching starts. So I have saved 30%, 40% of my time in teaching basic concepts. I have said that, okay, go to the NPTEL, do this particular course, which is available, and then come to the class. We will have a discussion around it. We will see how problems use those concepts. I think Dr. Vineet, you can do certain of these things which Rohini ma'am has said that they are already doing. They have identified the modules. They have seen what are there. Where there is a gap, this thing I wanted to teach, which is not there available into that particular program, because every faculty teaches the subject in a different way. My content will be different from your set of contents that you want to deliver into that particular course. You identify those areas, you tailor, you teach those. Which is what should happen ideally into a technological classroom, where I should be more of a person managing this orchestra. I should be orchestrator of that classroom environment, right? So which is what is happening, which is possible because content is available and most of the time free of cost, and with some basic search and basic efforts into it, you can identify which is the credible sources. If it is coming from a credible university and so on and so forth, you can rely on that as well. Okay.
So
should we go ahead?
My question?
Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
I just wanted to add to the same question of what Dr. Vandana has asked. What is the minimum duration which adds to the credibility?
Minimum duration?
Minimum duration of enrolling into these courses.
No,
we have these webinars. I'll make my question more clear, sir. We have these webinars which are one day. We have these FDPs which are only scheduled for a day or two. So what is the minimum number of days which will add more credibility to your certificate or to the online courses that we have enrolled? Is there any such specific thing that it should be minimum of 5 days or so?
Okay. It entirely depends on the kind of program that you want to enroll for. What is your objective of enrolling into a particular program? If it is, let's say, a training program, which is relevant to one particular theme, topic, and whatever, and over the course of next 3 years, 6 years of let's say teaching and delivery every day, if you can complete that certification, good enough. But it shouldn't be, let's say, a half-day program or one-day program. These are more of a workshops, which will help you to gain some understanding about some concepts, but won't make you an expert into that particular area. So there is no set pattern or standard that it should be minimum 3 days, minimum 5 days, it has to be 1 week. But if you depends on what kind of program, and most of these online programs, they work on a hybrid model. that I'll be covering very soon now. Whereas there is a synchronous learning. So I'm sitting here and 100 of you are sitting in front of your screens. There's a synchronous learning happening. Whatever I'm saying, whatever I want to convey, whatever topics, discussions, things that we want to discuss, I'll discuss. Then I'll give you certain reading materials to go through. And then we will meet probably after a month or after a week or probably tomorrow or whatever, depending on the program and structure and course. And then we will go ahead from there. So it should not happen that, okay, there's a one-day workshop that has happened, and after that I can claim that, okay, I have been certified from this and this agency, and I am kind of expert into that area, which is good to mention into the CV, which adds on to your things, but doesn't have much credibility attached to it. If you see serious programs, they are generally longer in, right? And credibility that they are coming from. So these things can help you in managing certain things, but of course it varies. It depends on kind of thing that you are looking at and so on and so forth, right? There's no standard answer. I don't know, but depends on what is your objective of attending that program and what is the level of expertise that you are expecting from that. If that is high, then the program should be longer in length and so on.
May I ask, sir? Sir, may I ask?
Yes, Dr.
May I ask, sir? 1 minute, 1 second, sir. Sir, actually, when we go through one content, actually we suggest the students or myself to go through the foreign author books or other standard book. But we are now just interested to this internet forum, internet technology forum, education technology forum, to suggest the student to go through that subject course content and enrich your knowledge or others. But what I am asking, the reliability or authenticity of this the e-learning content, rather other than this book author, foreign author books or Indian author books, which one, in respect to the authenticity, or is there any regulatory authority to this this U Academy or other e-learning platform? How will I what I'm telling?
Ensure that whatever I am getting is coming from some credibility.
Yes.
It is very genuine and a very common concern across fraternity of our teachers and students. So there are plenty of programs available. I don't know which one to go about, and there are few programs which are available on few platforms, Udemy and so on and so forth, where you just pay 400-500 rupees and you do a certification program on cybersecurity. I was just looking for. I'm giving this example because I'm developing these kinds of programs these days. So, which is not much credible. So anybody who has done, let's say, a certification program in cybersecurity, they attach themselves to these kinds of platforms and they do offer this kind of thing. Now you have to use your judgment to, when I'm recommending this for my students, I exactly know that what I expect from these students to gain from a program. So if I want them to have some basic level of understanding in cybersecurity, I would not recommend them to go for a, let's say, a 400-500 rupees program, which happens in a day and it is done. So there are 4, 5, 6 videos that they prepare, and there are few learning materials which are free of cost available on the website. They just provide that and that's it, which is good to familiarize yourself with a subject, with a concept, with the content. But if I want them to have some basic understanding at undergrad level or post-graduation level, I would not be recommending those programs to them. Then how to understand and identify the credibility? We know certain names. Let's say some program which is coming from MIT, from good business school, from Indian context, if it is coming from, which is not limited to, I'm not saying only coming from IITs and IIMs will have a good credibility. There are good private schools which are providing very good content and platforms. But generally you can identify and associate that, okay, this is a brand which will not do things in a very superficial way. So I have done plenty of programs on NPTEL that many other, Dr. Vineet has said he has done 7 to 8 courses on NPTEL and Coursera. I myself have done different kinds of programs on NPTEL. using design thinking and so many other things, machine learning and Python and all that. So you can make a sense based on who is offering it. So if let's say IIT Kharagpur is offering a program in statistical techniques, right, for social sciences, I can attach some credibility to this program. I can go for the checking the credibility of the instructors, course content, which is available free of cost. Generally, you can look at the course content, what they are delivering, what is the length of the program. As somebody was asking, how long should be the program? So if I'm looking for an in-depth knowledge of a particular subject, it shouldn't start in the morning and should be finished by the end of the day, right? So it should be at least 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks long program. You can go through it. There's a 6 to 8 hours of learning that happens per week, which is normally we do in a classroom environment, right? That you have to do 20 or 2. It is going to be very superficial, and you are going to, the more you consume and more you will vomit very soon. So it is not going to stay with you. So generally these programs are longer in duration. You can identify the authenticity or the credibility of it depending on the institutions that they are involved in. Now in the digital platforms, few more things that can help you to identify the credibility is how many people are enrolling for this program. Of course, there is no way of cross-verifying it, but it shows you what are the popular programs into this particular discipline. How many people have enrolled it? How old is the program? This is running from last 7 years or so on and so forth. There are discussion forums, comments, reviews, star ratings, all these are given. Of course, as the star ratings on the Amazon, you are never sure that are they authentic or not. You just go by your gut feeling, right? And you go by your prior experience, or you just ask to your community that, okay, if I want to do this particular program, let's say accounting and financial management, which are the platforms, what are the courses, should I do this, what are the platforms that I should go for, right? So you can do some basic secondary research based on this. And as I said, this is an information overload. This is too much. This is a CR. This is the so many things which are available online now, right? That it is really confusing and it is really mind-boggling which one to trust and which one to go for. But with some basic search, with some basic credibility check, you can identify. And of course, it has to be driven by what is your objective of learning and the depth that you are looking at, right? If I want to just do a certification for the sake of it, because it will help me in promotion, it has a requirement from a university or from AICTE that I have to do 3 certification programs, of course you can do that. But let's say if you want to develop some mastery at intermediate or expert level, you should go for programs who are duration, with longer duration and content coverage, depth is there, coming from a good university. This will help you in making some judgments. Okay, let me go really fast. I have a lot of things to cover too. Okay, sir, so these are some of the.
Sir, finally, may I add?
Yes, yes.
Sir, this is Mrityaranjan from Odisha. Actually, I have done 3 refresher course from SWAYAM ARPIT, annual refresher program. But after so much difficulty, after so much evaluations, difficulty faced by me or also different participants also, we have already cleared 3 refresher course. May I know the credibility of that refresher course for my career or for my yes sir?
If I can ask you, what is your objective of doing that course? Why you did that course?
Sir, actually, being a finance faculty, I am doing 3 refresher course in case of financial market or in case of your economics or in econometrics.
But what was the objective? What drove you to do that course? You wanted to enhance your learning? You wanted to upgrade?
Yes. Obviously, your enhancement of learning is also one of the objective. But is there any credibility of any credit points or any?
There are certain courses which gives you credit points, right? I have done some courses on SWAYAM itself, which gives you certain credit points which can be used into the government systems if you want to, let's say, go for promotion or do want to upgrade your scale and so on and so forth. But more than that, now I'm skilled. I know that I have done some, and most of the courses which are there on the SWAYAM or NPTEL portals, they are authentic. They are from the very good universities, mostly from IITs, IIMs, and other good B schools or other engineering institutes from India and other places on India mostly, and they are trust available on the SWAYAM. The content, there's a set of panel which verifies it, authenticates it, and then in the government system there are systems where you get credit points, which is helpful in promotion, which is helpful in this. But beyond all this, as you rightly said, this is helpful for you because you wanted to upgrade yourself, upskill yourself, right? Yeah. So that is what your intention. Now you can move, right? So I was, let's say, teaching basic courses in IT. Or MIS and project management, software development management, and so on and so forth. Now this has changed. The field has evolved and there are new kinds of courses which has come on. So now I have to go for blockchain. Now I have to go for IoT. Now I have to learn machine learning and artificial intelligence. Now I have to see how to teach R and Python. Now, if I'm coming from that era where I have those basic courses in software development management, project management, MIS, system analysis and design, and now I have to teach these programs because these are in demand and my university expects me to do that. Students expect me to do that. How to upgrade myself? So these are the platforms, SWAYAM, NPTEL, and of course you have to verify authenticity, check the authenticity. And then this is how you go about upskilling yourself, which is more required. This is how technology and ICT is going to help you as an instructor to upskill yourself, which is the need of the hour, right?
Okay,
that
sir.
has to
Thank
be.
you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes. I hope I have answered to a certain extent what was your query. Let me quickly cover a few other things, and excuse me if I'm not able to cover fully because of time constraint, and this is such a diverse topic and such a vast topic, and because we are into the sea of technology and the content that is we are drowning in, it needs a full day workshop kind of thing, that what to do and how to do and so on and so forth, and what is the future of it. But let me go through really fast and try to see things that can be covered. Let us move ahead and see how the technology is disrupting the education and what the experts are saying about it. So at this point, let me share with you a video in our current context. What is the future of technology and how technology is disrupting. Just a minute, let me adjust this. Okay, are you able to see a video?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Audio is clear? Audio is coming?
Yes, sir. Okay.
Yes, sir.
This is an interesting conversation. This has happened on NDTV Prime, where best of the best leaders into this tech space from Coursera, from Khan Academy, and from other platforms, they have come and they have discussed that how the technology is disrupting actually the whole education or the learning and teaching process. So just look at it and then we will discuss it.
Well, disruption, we are constantly told, the headlines are screaming disruption is now the name of the game. It's become a very mainstream, very front on a word. And when there are just so many spheres that are talking about disruption, why should it not be time for education to look at this as well? That's what we're looking at today, disrupting education, a very special panel with me. Let me introduce them right away. There's Sandeep Bhatna, who's heading Khan Academy in India. Kabir Chadha, who's the boss for Coursera in India. There's Pranav Kothari. If you're familiar with Mindspark, you'd know him. That's Educational Initiatives in Mindspark. Again, someone who needs no introduction. Ashish Savan of the Central Square Foundation and also co-founder of Ashoka University, and Luis Miranda of the Global Advisory Board, U Chicago. Thanks all so much for taking our time to speak to us today. Ashish, first to you. Access and quality are two things that there's been so much hand-wringing and chest beating about in this country when you talk about education. We've been talking about it for the longest time. The glass, many would say firmly half empty. They would even argue if it's half full in the first place when you talk about education. I believe that technology and the wide of it can finally make tangible change to the story.
Given how poor the human capital is, the quality of teachers in India, I believe that EdTech will actually play a much more meaningful role in the Indian context than it would in the Western context or in a more developed context. So there's a great opportunity to get a lift. I mean, very recently, Professor Karthik Mullidharan, who has done research in education for the last 15 years, did an analysis of the Mindspark program and found that in his 15 years of work, this was the most effective tool in terms of improving learning outcomes, had the best results ever. And that, I think, is an indication of what is to come.
Right. Kabir, to you, you know, there are all those who perhaps are still arguing whether we're ready to sort of move into these online classrooms. What are the numbers? Where are these students coming from? Are they largely urban, but our numbers sort of are beyond these urban centers? How do you sort of see that?
I think in the last year, we've seen a massive shift in a mentality for Indian learners to move online to find the skills that they're looking for, right? And so, you know, I can tell you about Coursera. We've grown more than double in terms of the number of people who are coming to us. And your question about where are they coming from? I think right now, we're still getting folks who are reasonably well educated, who have definitely a college degree, if not at the very least a high school degree, who are coming, who can speak English, have a reasonable internet connection, and likely chances are they're either in a tier 1 or a tier 2 city today, right? And that's where we're getting the numbers. The future needs to be beyond that.
There's no arguing that we have to sort of ride on, say, Digital India. We have to ride on getting access to all those who need it beyond these big urban centers. Louis, as someone who said that you love joining the dots, help us do that exactly. How are we going to sort of get there?
If you look at it, the two sort of major changes which have facilitated this is on the telecom side. One, when telecom became, the mobile phone became cheaper than the landline. And secondly, when people moved from the desktop to the mobile phone. And I think that's what's going to be driving a lot. I've sort of been using Coursera for a long time. I've done about half a dozen courses on that. And it's been fantastic. The challenge we also have in India is that the gap is so wide. Teachers are not able to fill the gap because we don't have enough teachers. And there's also issues about the mixed quality of some of the teachers. I met some fantastic teachers in remote places like in Manipur and in Ladakh. But on average, it's been a challenge. So if you were to sort of skip it up significantly, because of technology.
Big number. Point that's being made that you have a great teacher sitting in X part of the country, say Manipur. The point is that there's a student there in Chennai or somewhere in, you know, on the outskirts there who should have access to that great quality teaching, not having to suffer absence of a teacher or someone who's not really up to scratch. But are we anywhere close to achieving this? Because it sounds perfect and a country with our kind of challenges could really use it. But are we anywhere really close to achieving it, or how far are we?
I don't think so. I think right now a lot of the talk about like teachers, you know, is just the delivery side of it. We're not talking about the absorption side of it. So as a nation, we stress more about teachers teaching than we do about students learning. So I think a lot more research on, you know, where are the students making mistakes? What are they not learning? You know, why are they not learning? And then building tools that remediate those gaps is what's important. I think technology has become a fancy word. And, you know, if we just use technology in education for the fancifulness of a smart board, of a, you know, teacher assessment tool, that may not sort of necessarily work out. I mean, technology has to work on those areas where humans cannot. For example, teaching ethics, being a good citizen, facilitating group projects, something that only humans can do. Delegate. And I think that's where, unparceling a little bit of what is it that technology can do that humans cannot, and playing on that would, I think, inch us closer to that.
Right, that's an important point, actually. Because when I did a quick poll at work before I got here on what people would like to know from this, and many people said, I want to know what is the tangible outcome that I should look for. Like, I want to see a tangible outcome. I'll sign up for this course for my child. I'm willing to pay whatever it is that they charge, but what is the tangible outcome? Then I want, because we're in a society now where it's 100% or nothing, then I want 100% or nothing. Otherwise, there's no paisa vasool. In this scenario, and this is the Indian scenario, really, there has to be paisa vasool.
Okay, I'll stop it here. I'll share the link of this discussion. This is a 10 to 12 minutes discussion. I'll share the link of it with all of you, so you can watch it in your free time, because we are running behind the schedule, and let me cover a few of the things that I wanted to discuss. But it is an interesting discussion, and what these experts are saying, and some of the crux, that basically the Coursera is still the people, they are coming from the tier 1 or 2 cities, as he's talking about, English speaking, because content in is English. So when we are talking about democratization of the education, so some let's say a kid who is in somewhere in Tamil Nadu or in Kerala and wants to absorb this information in his or her native language, right? Facility is not there. There's no content. Although I will show you some platforms which have been developed by Government of India, and with a push to Digital India initiatives, now there is a more emphasis on developing contents into the native language, which can help students to learn primarily into their mother tongue, which is not available as of now. There is still bandwidth issues, connectivity problems, and so on and so forth. So that is, and this is more centered into the urban area. That is what Coursera person was talking about. Mr. Pranav Kothari, who said that it is still more teachers teaching than a student learning. And that is what we feel and we see in our classrooms, where we are more concerned about finishing the course and teaching this to the students than students demanding the course. And that is why the new concepts of, let's say, flipped classrooms and so on and so forth has gained momentum, where it is most pull by the students than push from the faculty side. So there are various levels of ICT use in teaching that we have sensed and we have discussed and deliberated. It is a supplement to the curriculum, or it is a reinforcement or re-enhancement of the curriculum based on the technology and the tools that we are having. Or is it the facilitation of the emerging curriculum that technology gives? There are 3 different modes of learning that we already know, and there are various factors that contributes to these different modes of learning. One is physical, which is face-to-face in a classroom environment. Second is online, which is purely into a digital platform, e-learning, self-paced. You don't have any physical interaction, or synchronous interaction and the real time like this. This is also an online, what we are doing, but this is a synchronous communication where me and all of you, we are on the same time on a same platform having a simulated environment as we had into the classroom. Of course, there are limitations to it. There is no physical interaction. There is communication, appearances. There is not that physical connect, but it is still a synchronous online communication. There is a hybrid model of it. So some part of it I'll do online. So you have done, let's say, 3 modules of courses on Swayam or Coursera, and then we come on the weekends for a synchronous communication, right? Where I'll be available for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon to synthesize the learning, whatever has happened, to discuss, to deliberate topics that we have studied in an offline mode. Offline means you are still learning it online, but I'm not available there. You are just going through the videos and contents and so on and so forth. So there's a hybrid model of all this. There are different factors which contributes to what kind of learning and which to derive what. So like cost, pace, I want to learn it at my own pace. I don't want to come to the 10 o'clock in the morning in the class. I want to do it at 10 o'clock in the night, 12 o'clock into the night. I want to do it flexibility in a flexible environment, right? Collaboration, pedagogy, these are different kinds of factors which help you to decide which model to choose and how to mix it and match it. I wanted to do this exercise, but you have discussed it in the very beginning. We started discussion with this. When we are in a physical mode versus we are in online mode, what are your experiences have been? So what is positives about the physical? There's good interaction. I know exactly what my students are doing into the class. I can just cross check. I can go and verify. They can ask me questions back, which is not there in an online mode, and so on and so forth. What are the positives of the online? It can be attended from anywhere. Students need not to come to the class. It is flexible. It is so on and so forth, and so on. This was from the teacher's viewpoint. From the learner's viewpoint, what is positive about the physical environment of learning, being inside a classroom versus an online? So this is what we wanted to do, but you can do it at your own end with probably with your students or with your colleagues at your time. We talked about synchronous versus asynchronous learning. There are various advantages of both of these. Synchronous, it is mostly real time, online or offline. It can happen in both ways. There are various tools that enables this, like video conferencing, live chats, webinars that we have all attended, and of course the advantages and disadvantage part of synchronous. And the asynchronous, as we are seeing, Coursera or the NPTEL. Content is available online. You are free to do it, watch it at your own convenience, anytime, from anywhere. It is self-paced. I don't want to do this class for 1 hour. 20 minutes I have attended now, and then I will do it afterwards. So it is self-paced. I don't want to finish it in 1 week. I want to extend it to 10 days. Or if I'm a quick learner, I will do it in 2 days, right? So these are some of the advantages of synchronous, asynchronous learning. And there are various options and tools available to it. There are plenty of new ways of engaging with the technology in teaching and learning process. So there is a collaboration Web 2.0. You can go through these links, which will help you in further exploring that particular concept when I'm talking about collaboration beyond the classroom. So Indiegogo, which is a crowdsourcing platform, which helps students. Let's say I have a very innovative idea to develop a product or a service for my e-commerce class, and I want to build a prototype of it and I want to test it. This is a platform where you can go, you can put a concept of your idea through a text description or through a video description, and then you can ask for funding, you can look for collaboration, you can look for partners who can help you in build that particular prototype or a particular product or a service. And from there you gain different kinds of advantages. I wanted to share my experience of using Web 2.0, and if I can just quickly show you, let me see if I can just, yes, this is a particular basic, and I'm sure that many of you would be doing it in one way or the other. I have been teaching e-commerce course for last 5 years in IMT Nagpur, and over the last 5 years, the number of students who have taken this course, I have created this particular closed group, which is a private group. You see there are 564 members. So from the 2014 and onwards, when this course was launched, and this is an elective course, all the students are here, those who have taken this particular course. Now they are in industry, they are working on different verticals and so on and so forth. But all the discussions which has happened over the period of time is on one place, all right? And over the period, it is now evolving. Now there is a new class that comes, it has been added into this particular group, and there is so much of the resource sharing, which I'm talking about the advantage of technology in this coming age, that you see these students, he has passed out 2 years back, but wherever he finds something concrete, something useful, he shares it. So this course start next month. So in November, this will start now. So this is from last time this course was there. And you see there are different kinds of things that can be shared. This is a startup started by one of the participants of this course, and he keeps on sharing what is happening in his particular space, and so on and so forth. So these are different kinds of projects that students are doing. So this is one form of using Web 2.0. So Facebook as a platform, how to use that. So there's a World Bank report that I want to share with my students. Of course, I don't want to, let's say, print it, and I want to give it as a resource. And why I want to use this as a platform, because students are always logged in. So there are newspaper reports that I want to share and collaborate with my students. It can be done easily with just one click, right? And since they are all the time available on this particular platform, it is easy for them to quickly go through what is being shared. They can start commenting on it, and they can start learning from each other, and there's so many things. Plus, on top of it, you want to give certain instructions for the classroom, you can do that. So this is how you can explore, and you can use different kinds of platforms which are readily available. Facebook, I don't have to invent. I don't have to create this particular platform, right? So this is already there. I just want to use it and incorporate it for better collaboration and learning in my classroom. So that is how it can be done.
Hello, Dr. Abhishek, can I interrupt? I'm so sorry to interrupt the flow. I'm so sorry. I know participants are enjoying, but then there is a slight time constraint. Okay, so if you could just wind up in next 2-3 minutes. We have another session lined up at 11:45 by Dr. Ikirala. I suppose I don't have to tell you anything more. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah. So sir, please, if you could just wind up in next 2-3 minutes.
Just 1
I'm
minute.
so sorry to disturb the flow. I would not have done this. Okay. So sorry.
No, sorry. My fault. I should have finished it in time, but let me close it in 1 minute. Okay. Yes. Yes. Going further, let me just say that what more I wanted to cover, or what more I wanted to discuss. These are new ways of incorporating technology, and how your ICT, information and communication technologies, or the information technology tools help you is, let's say I wanted to discuss World Economic Forum discussion that Jack Ma had, right, with budding entrepreneurs. I don't have access to Jack Ma, right? $10 minutes, I can involve them into the discussion, and so on and so forth. So right, so this is already a content that I'm consuming in my class. Second way, when I'm evaluating, let's say, e-commerce projects that has been done by my students, I can have a panel and invite them, one from Bangalore, one sitting into the Pune, and one sitting in the Gurugram, and they are coming from different domains and expertise, and they can simultaneously evaluate the projects done by my students in my class over a Skype call. Right, so these are some of the advantages that these platforms give you. Okay, moving ahead, the last point that I wanted to touch, but given the time constraint, I have to restrict myself, is the democratization of the education. These are some of the people who have visited my class, as I said, and I will skip all that. There are new kinds of fostering academic collaboration that are happening, and you see top universities providing academic collaboration with UpGrad, which is a new form of university, if I can use that word, from MICA to Duke University to IIIT Bombay, IIIT Bangalore, IMT, of course, IIT Madras. They're fostering new collaborations. IIM Indore providing a certification program with JIXA University, and so on and so forth, right? These are some of the Government of India initiatives. You can go through all of them in detail. Many of them you have been knowing and you have gone through. Swayam Prabha, which is a DTH channel, because every home has a TV now. And there's a free channel that has been promoting education at higher education level and school level, which is a wonderful platform. Diksha, which is an online platform for school education, and plenty of courses and millions of students enrolling on these platforms. Good part is this is also available in their native language. So if I'm coming from Gujarat and I want to have mathematics or physics lessons in Gujarati, it is available there. So there is little awareness about it, but this is there. For us, EPG Pathshala, which is about providing postgraduate education, and there are hundreds of programs available there through this platform. Going ahead, what is the next thing that we can expect? We can expect technologies. I had see them in these video resources where virtual reality is used into the classroom teaching, where I am telling my students who are into, let's say, architecture, who are studying architecture, or who is studying tourism and hospitality, to using VR technologies or history for that matter. If I'm teaching secondary education students, and I want, hello?
Not audible.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. So yes, Dr. Balram, just check your connection and this. Okay. So when we are talking about democratization, right? And then there is a concept of self-learning. I want to learn what I want to learn. One program, let's say from music, one program from history, and then a data science course. This is not available in any university at the current time. I want to learn it at my own pace. I don't want to sit in a classroom. I want a personalized study material. This is not available at the given point of time, but this can happen, and this is possible with the new set of technologies and the digital immersion of technologies in different ways, right? So let me stop myself here. We know Dr. Ikrala, and the next session is going to be very interesting and fascinating session. We all, as a faculty, also have been the fan of Professor Ikrala and his teaching methods, how to use movies into the classroom and into the teaching. So I rest myself here. Thank you very much for your attentive listening. And there are a few more things that we wanted to discuss, but of course we will do it some other time. And I'll supply these study materials to Professor Mohanty, who can forward it to you all. Thank you very much for being a nice audience. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you. Thank you, Dr. Abhishek. I mean, I can't thank you enough. Okay, I mean, there was such huge pile of information that was delivered through just the 90 minutes of interaction we had with you. Okay, and we hope that we'll rope you in the future to tell us more on the emerging trends in technology in classrooms. Okay, because we'll continue to learn all our life on technology. I think this is growing exponentially with every passing moment. Okay, so there is no end. There's an endless ocean. Okay, so thank you for honoring our invitation and being with us. Okay, thank you, and I hope that the participants, have immensely enjoyed, and they might have gathered a lot from this 90 minutes of interaction with you. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Pleasure is entirely mine, and thank you very much, all of you, for your time.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, participants, you can continue to log in. We'll start on time. We do not want to delay the sessions. Okay, maybe we'll delay it by a minute or two, but not beyond that. Okay, as such, this is a this is an online classroom, so even if you want to fetch your cup of tea or coffee, you can do it anytime. Okay, you are at your home. Okay, so let's not disturb the flow. Let's not delay the class. We'll start on time and we'll end on time. Okay, so continue to stay logged in.